Hey guys, episode 29 is now underway. We're going to have a weird one. We've got Max is calling in, which is not weird, but we have our lawyer friend Jamie on. We're probably going to talk about this this thing that Trump did, because some old lady finally died. Not that we weren't expecting it, but it was still, everybody was hoping, I would say most people were hoping she'd wait at least another 2 months, but we'll go from there. And then Sam's on his way. He's going to hop in as soon as he gets here, but he'll be in studio with me. So, having a lot of busy stuff this week. I accidentally volunteered to be part of the Board of Health in Knoxville. I might actually get selected for it. I don't know. I got to go to an interview on Monday. The cops that killed Breonna Taylor are not going to jail. That's the top of the news that I've got so far. So let's get this noisemaker out of the way and introduce lawyer Jamie's in the house. Max is in the house, and Sam's on his way. So what's new, guys? Working. Oh, wait, yeah, that's weird for you. I forgot that that's a weird thing for you.
It is a weird thing for me.
I know Jamie's going to say he's working too damn much, and it's my fault. Well, it's my wife's fault, but I'm pretty sure that's the story if I remember.
It's not all your fault. It's just mostly your fault.
Just mostly my fault. Check. Yeah, I don't know. Like, the Breonna Taylor thing's kind of weird to me. I guess if we're going to have a lawyer on, my stance on it is like I hate the no-knock warrant thing, but I don't think the cops did anything technically wrong. They followed they were within their duties. It'd either be the judge or the detective that asked for the no-knock that should be under scrutiny, or the fact that the no-knock exists. But I don't think the 3 cops that went in necessarily did anything wrong. They were shot at and they shot back. But for me, the whole premise of it even happening, like a no-knock warrant to me is just setting up for a shootout.
Yeah, I agree. But the cops didn't do anything wrong. I mean, it's not like it's a policy. They didn't break a policy doing what they did.
Right. That's what I'm saying. They didn't break the policy. They didn't break the law as it's written per se. They didn't in their part of the process, but I just think no-knock warrants are fucking gross. That's my issue. Jamie?
Man, no-knock warrants help no one. They really don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to take the position that I think that that law enforcement exceeded their bounds there. I think they probably should have backed off, called for backup, and then more prudent during the circumstances. And I think this wouldn't have happened. But we live in an era right now of law enforcement shoot first, ask questions never. So it's a big problem.
Yeah. I mean, that's what.
So are you saying that they overstepped their bounds, or are you saying that they followed the law, but you don't agree with what stands?
Well, Mac, I'll tell you this: I am no criminal law expert. I don't pretend to be. From what I have read in the media, which could be biased, shocker. That I do think that they may have followed the letter of the law, although I'm not willing to concede that point. But I certainly think from the point of view of common sense and doing their duty in such a way as to do the least amount of harm and do the most good possible, I think they fell far short as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, that makes sense. So
I got you. Yeah. I agree with you on what you're saying. I was just trying to clarify whether you thought that they were not, like they did something illegal, but they did something. You're saying they did something like immoral, not necessarily illegal.
Yeah, if I were going to give you a great answer on that one, Max, I'd have to go into a little bit more research in order to argue my position. I think I would fall a little bit flatter-footed than I'd prefer if I was going to argue that point right now.
Okay.
See, this time he's actually right. It's an actual lawyer this time, Max. So you can't yell at him for sounding like a lawyer because he is one.
Quit being like a lawyer.
You can. I just won't care.
Yeah, or it's a compliment. Either way. But I mean, like I said, I think or actually more like you said, JB. It's like let's take this particular out. Like what is the value to the police of doing a no-knock? What is their goal in doing a no-knock? The only thing I could think of to logically even pretend to argue that it makes sense is to try to get to evidence before it's possibly destroyed. So if you actually go knock on the door and say, hey, it's the police, we'd like to come in, we have a search warrant, and people are running in and they're flushing all their shit down the toilet or whatever. That's the only thing that can make.
Well, not to, just to interject there, I think that you make a valid point, because as time has gone on, I think our civil liberties have been continually eroded in that respect, as far as the exceptions to the warrant requirement that oftentimes gets lost. And, the media and public discourse is the warrant is the rule. There have been all these exceptions that have been carved out, that I think many of them, in my opinion, whatever that's worth, which is probably not much, I think are ridiculous. And in fact, going back to the heady days when I was in law school, back when I had hair, I argued in a moot court setting about the search incident to a lawful arrest, and which under that doctrine, in essence, if you were operating a motor vehicle and you become arrested for some reason, there is no requirement that law enforcement have to get a warrant just to rifle through your car.
Right.
So, if you're arrested for whatever reason, then all of a sudden that's just carte blanche. It's just like the issue with no-knock warrants. What are the exigent circumstances? And to me, I don't like it. I really don't. And I know you give me shit constantly for being a liberal, but I do have that libertarian twinge in there, a little bit of libertarian hot sauce that just does not make it sit well for me, that law enforcement can just come and kind of willy-nilly without a warrant do things. Because, if you law enforcement, come and hear me engaged in a shootout inside my apartment, well, perhaps that might be a good idea to intervene. But, if there's something that's much more benign, that causes law enforcement to just come on in, I should be allowed to flush my drugs down the toilet before they come in. I mean, that's my God-given right.
Right. And to defend myself for a second, I'm not. I don't make fun of you for being a liberal. I make fun of you for being an anti-conservative.
The difference without a distinction. I understand.
Right. There's a distinction there, because.
Well, don't worry, Jamie. Trump will fix all those problems you're talking about.
Oh, absolutely, and then
he started
caused 9,000 more on top of it.
He started today. You got a mother of 37 Catholic taking RBG seat.
And I'm chomping at the bit to talk all about that. I'm
sure you are. I mean, all right, everybody. Rowdy's chiming in because Sam walked in the door like he does. So you'll have to listen to the dog whine for a second. So the I don't know, like what I find interesting so far in what like in all the pre-talk is this. I forgot her name already. I apologize, but it's a 3-name lady.
Amy Coney Barrett.
Yeah, she's got like 13 kids. 2 of them are adopted Haitians, and apparently she's super Catholic. That's all I know so far, because that's all anybody's talking about.
That's pretty close. It's 7 children, but who's counting?
I mean, after 5, it's from 5 to 20, it's the same thing. Once you bust 20, that's when you start getting into like a TV show on TLC or something like that.
Yeah, the Duggars.
I have got a basketball team. So.
Yeah, yeah, I got a baseball. She's almost got a baseball team. So, but yeah, I mean, so like, but some of the little bit I've heard so far, I mean, I guess Trump officially gave her the nod this afternoon. That actually came through. It was rumored to be happening. I didn't actually see the news alert on it. I was having a birthday party.
It happened. Yeah, it happened this afternoon. He made the formal announcement that she will be nominated. I don't believe that the actual nomination has occurred, but he has made the statement that she is going to be his nomination.
Cool.
Which is the worst kept secret in all of D.C.
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody was trying to keep it a secret, but I don't know. Like the discussion, at least I'd heard it was her and some Cuban lady was the other one that were like high on the list as soon as the real conversation started. Because I don't know. I mean, politically speaking, like, what's the attack here? If you're the Democrats, like the easy attack obviously is the 4 years ago the same thing happened, and you're like, no, we got to stall. It's the next president's choice, not the one on his way out. Right? That's the easy argument, and I follow that to a degree. But more directly, it's what's the argument against this lady? Or for this lady,
Well,
I guess. I guess I'm assuming you're against her because Trump picked her, and that may be incorrect on my part, and I apologize for that assumption.
Shockingly enough, that is an incorrect assumption. If we do dispense with the procedural part of it, which, yeah, I mean, just to touch on that for a moment, the hypocrisy of the Republicans never ceases to boggle the mind, because when President Obama nominated Merrick Garland, who is not a liberal, mind you, very, very moderate judge, I believe the chief judge, if I recall correctly, for the D.C. Circuit, he was essentially chosen as almost a compromise pick,
right,
by the Obama administration in order to try to shepherd his nomination through. And Mitch McConnell and the Republicans invented.
Hold on, time out. You actually said his name. That's weird. Last time you were on the show, you did not say his actual name once.
Well, Moscow Mitch.
There you go.
That's true. Maybe I've turned over a new leaf. maybe that's what it is. Maybe I've gotten my heart right with Jesus. I don't know what it is. But in any event, I flipped up. So Moscow Mitch and his horde of Trumppublicans. Does that sound more like me?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I called the wrong Jamie for a second.
I don't want to disappoint. That would be tragic. But they invented this doctrine, and it's ludicrous. And I won't belabor the point, but I as so often happens, I got into a fight on Twitter. I know that shocks you. This week with some person who named Jill, whatever her name is, but she said she tried to assert that this idea of that in the last year of the president's term, you can or can't have your nominee considered, and depending on what party it is. And she said it's in the Constitution. I said, first of all, put down the wine, lady. It's I'm not trying to judge, but it is 8:30 in the morning, and I'm like, where in the fuck did you find that in the Constitution? I've got it on my damn wall in my office. I took a quick peek, and it doesn't say anything about that. But that is just the bullshittery that has happened with the media and just the continued ignorance that it just espouses. People believe this shit like it's the gospel when it's not even true. But to get at least take a small step off the soapbox for a moment, the Moscow mentioned the Trumppublicans invented this idea wherein if you are in the last year of your presidency, then the Senate has no obligation to even consider your nominee, to the point where they're not even going to hold any hearing. They're not even going to meet with the guy or girl. That's not even going to happen. So, to make a short story long, Merrick Garland got no shake, although it was 10 months. For whatever reason, the dear leader gets elected, and off we go with Neil Gorsuch. So, yes, that was a stolen seat, but I actually do not fundamentally dislike Amy Coney Barrett. I've done some research on her. I knew that when Kavanaugh was nominated that she was on the short list, and the word on the street was, since she had only been on the Seventh Circuit since 2017, she didn't have sufficient experience. Probably has a better demeanor than Kavanaugh, but so does pretty much everybody else. But in any event, her credentials are actually quite stellar, and her undergraduate degree is from Rhodes over in Memphis. So
right, and then she was teaching at Notre Dame for a while. Is that right?
She was Notre Dame Law School, and she clerked she clerked for a circuit judge whose name I don't know her first year at law school, but her second year she clerked for Antonin Scalia, former associate justice. That, as we were talking about, the seat was stolen by the Trumppublicans, Moscow Mitch and Gorsuch. But so the irony never ceases to astound. That's sarcasm. But in any event, she's very much a textualist like Scalia. And I had always kind of admired Scalia when he was on the bench, because he was such a strict textualist that oftentimes his opinions did not run consistent with the so-called conservative mantra, particularly when it came to civil rights and and criminal jurisprudence and criminal procedure in particular. So her opinions, which I've had a chance to peruse a little bit the last 2 days since it became clear she was going to be the nominee, sort of really reflect that. So I don't hate her. I really don't, Seth. I really don't hate her. I don't like her, but I don't hate her.
Okay, that's fair.
So that's something that we can all agree on, both the left and the right, and the north and the south, or if you want to take the other parties. And the media is completely fucked up on either side.
Well, I was gonna make an AC since he's not here, because apparently last week AC's new catchphrase is fucking rhetoric.
It's more complicated than that.
Right, but I was gonna sub out rhetoric. It's all the fucking bullshit rhetoric. It's all the goddamn rhetoric. It's rhetoric. I wanted to ask. I wanted him to be here this week so I could ask him if like he goes into these with an intent on a theme, because last week he was full theme on the rhetoric is the issue. Everything we talked about, it came back to a rhetorics issue. Anyway, that's not for Jamie's ears, because he may or may not have listened to that episode, so he may have no idea what we're talking about. But yeah, so like go ahead.
Whether I listen or not, I can chime in very briefly on that, and that is that it was interesting to me after having an opportunity to look at either the majority opinions or some of the dissents that Judge Barrett has written, that both sides of the media are overplaying this. The left is essentially saying she's the fourth horseman of the apocalypse,
right?
And then the right is saying, she's next to Jesus Christ with 7 children. That's really not the case, because the liberals are discounting the fact that when it comes to civil rights and it comes to criminal procedure, she is on the side of the people. She is not on the side of the government. She's made quite clear in those opinions. And as far as the right is concerned, they're championing her, and again with her views on civil rights and her views on criminal procedure, that's just not the case. Yes, there may be issues for liberals when it comes to issues such as Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, the classic and seminal cases on abortion. That may be an issue, but when she was confirmed during her confirmation hearings to the Seventh Circuit, she did say that she believed that her faith should not dictate how she ruled, although she sort of backtracked a little bit on that and saying that she thought that if a death penalty case came in front of her, she should recuse herself because she doesn't believe in that. But I think the moral of the story, if you will, so to speak, is that the right is so happy and the left is so pissed, and I really don't think it's quite that cut and dry. I really don't.
Right. I get what you're saying. Because it's like,
you say she's a neutral person, like she's somewhere in between.
I mean, she's not neutral, but she's not right. She's not the devil, and she's not Jesus. And
I do think she does lean right. She does on that's very clear in her opinions and her dissent. But since again she comes from that line of Scalia, look at the text, the Constitution never evolves. It says what it says, and that's what it will always ever say. Is it leads to these sort of on the right, these kooky results wherein the law enforcement can't stand outside your house and run an infrared scanner over to try to determine whether or not you're growing weed.
Right.
So, I think that's
going
to be interesting.
I'm against that.
Well, okay, so here's the real question on the rhetorics game, because this leads to what you're saying, is that the left and the left media right now is like she's gonna be the deciding vote that overturns Roe v. Wade. Now abortion is fully illegal, and the right to choose is out the window. And the right is kind of jumping on the idea that that's something they're after. But I don't know, maybe I'm completely off base here. But in talking to some of the candidates we've had, like Courtney Durrett was here Monday, and I was talking to her about single issue voters, and abortion is one of those single issue things for people, which is, it makes sense. But realistically, what would it take? What would it take to completely make abortion 100% illegal in this country?
It will never make it 100% illegal.
Well, I mean, the first and most important thing is that 47 years of jurisprudence, Supreme Court jurisprudence, would have to be overturned. I mean, and you have to consider that although the court decided Roe v. Wade in 1973, Planned Parenthood versus Casey came to the court, I believe, if memory serves, in 1992. Not the exact issue, but certainly within that progeny of cases.
Right.
And
So
the Supreme Court upheld the basic principle in Roe v. Wade. So you're going to have to overturn 47 years worth of Supreme Court precedent.
right, and that's my point, is that I think the abortion argument is a political rhetoric tool that the parties use because they know that is a yes or no from a significant number of voters. When the reality really is it's not. There may be some changes here, but if anything, it's going to be a state level thing, not a federal level thing that's going to change any of the rules on it. But either way, some politician's going to run on the pro-choice or the pro-life or whatever. Okay, let me back up a second, because one of the things that's become a realization as we've talked to some of these politicians here in local politics and stuff like that is that either they know that we don't know what their job is, or they don't know what their job is either. And so they'll talk about things, and we had a couple different people in here, and they talk about different things, and then as I'm learning more about what their job actually is, I realize that one of their sales pitches to vote for me has nothing to do with their job title. If they do get the seat that they're seeking, they any county commissioner in here, any county commissioner in Knox County has 99.9999995% nothing to do with anything that goes on in the school district. All they do is rubber stamp the budget. That's all they do. So if any county commissioners out there running around talking about doing stuff for the schools, it's only true if they're talking about some periphery programs, whether it's like after school programs or preschool programs or some of these other things that the county actually can do. But actual Knox County schools, a county commissioner has nothing to do with. Long story longer. My point is I guess is that the abortion topic to me is just a tool to move voters that is never going to actually really, really change, no matter who's elected. Or who's right, or who?
No, I agree. I agree with you. The only way, the right is so anti-abortion, they outlaw abortion, but 99% of the far right people don't have a problem with abortion other than late term. So if there was a movement to just, ratify or however that goes, legal jargon for Roe v. Wade, which is first trimester abortions. And I think that would be a compromise that both sides would be happy about. I don't think that
I agree that both sides would technically be happy about, but I think for the sake of rhetoric, they can't say it. I don't think a solid conservative Republican could be like, yeah, we're happy with this decision. Now, they may actually be realistically, politically, even personally, morally, they might actually be very pleased that they've reduced it to a smaller window and it's less disgusting or whatever you want to put it at or whatever. But at the end of the day, they cannot say that out loud. They might agree with you, but they can't say it out loud because it's such an issue.
I agree with you. Like, nobody on the left, I'm sure there are some people, but a majority of people don't agree with late-term abortions.
Right.
Like if you said, most people think that is illegal. Like, oh no, you can't have an abortion at 8 months, but Roe v. Wade, it's legal. Like most people don't know that. Like most people on the left think that abortions are only legal early trimester, and so it's funny how our government or society has made people believe that something is a certain way that is not actually correct on what is true. So I think the left would be good with there being abortions. I think the right would be good with only first trimester abortions. I think that would satisfy a majority of people.
I think you're 100% correct, but the right can't say that they're okay with that, and the left will say that it's not enough. And
exactly.
they have to by they again. So I don't know. I've as of this moment right now, I've come to the conclusion. Anytime anybody starts talking abortion in here, I'm just gonna be like, no, it's not worth talking about. And they'd be like, "Oh, it's such a big deal." It's like you're not going to change anything. It's not going to. There's going to be, a push here, a push there, a pull back, or whatever. It's gonna move and shake, but it's not going anywhere. It can't. And if you're going to bring this up as a talking point, you're just doing it. You're just doing it as the red herring, as JB said. You're just doing it because you know that either your opponent has to speak off the opposite, and you know that there are enough people that are single issue voters that are going to go for or against based on that alone. And I think that's it.
Well,
go ahead, Jamie.
To chime in on that is, again, this goes back to, and I blame so much of the media, whether it's, either side of the aisle, it's the dumbing down of politics. You're taking an aspect of the human existence that none of us can escape from, and you're boiling off all of the intellectual critical thinking, all the nuances, and it's almost to a caveman level. Yes, abortion good, abortion bad, the end. And it's just it really is frustrating, from a lawyer's perspective and a citizen's perspective, to see just how stupid that the media has convinced the electorate to become, where we just, okay, are you for abortion or are you not for abortion? Well, it's not really quite that. No. I'm saying, are you pro-life or pro-choice? Well, I'm not. No, pick one. And then the end.
Right.
We're not going to have a discussion about the nuance.
Right. But again, my point is that I guess my point is what's there. I'm going the other way. I'm taking it a step back. If you want to bring that topic up, I'm just going to stop. It's not worth talking. Like, forget the nuance. Yeah. Just stop, because the nuance isn't important.
The problem with this whole entire conversation about abortion is very, very, very simple.
We're all dudes. Yes, we are all dudes. It's a fact.
Well, no, there are women people too.
Not in this conversation. There's not.
No, but
I guess your missus might be listening.
The pro-life movement. Yeah, she said this. So the pro-life movement believes that it's a human being and it's alive. And it's alive and it's a person. And the pro-choice believe that it's not a life and it's not anything. So when you have a pro-choice and a pro-life person arguing with each other, they cannot argue about the same thing. They're trying to argue what's better, an apple and an orange. It doesn't make sense. Like, they cannot argue that point, and that's why this debate has been going on forever and forever and forever, because we are not arguing the same issue.
Right. I get it. I know, and you've made that point before, and I get it. But my base point in this is that, legally speaking, federal level, legally speaking, it will take almost maybe the best it's going to be is that we just start over. Like the America as we know it dissolves and a new government replaces it. That's the only way the abortion is going to change significantly from where it's at, federally at least. So,
or the right proves that the child is alive, and then it's murder, and so you can't have an abortion because it's murder. It's like, if people were killing their babies after they were born, there'd be a huge issue. So the issue has nothing to do with women's rights. It has to do with, is the child alive or is it not alive?
Right.
And so that's what it comes down to. It has nothing to do with, it's my choice, it's my body. That has nothing to do with it. It has to do with, what do we think as a society when that fetus is alive? If it's not alive till it breathes air, then okay, then
right. And then and then the further nuance is when it's capable of breathing air on its own, or when it actually does on its own.
Say again.
Then the further nuance on that is when it's capable on its own, or when it actually does on its own.
So when it's like 14.
No, I mean, like, that you threw that 8 month number out earlier, and it's like, well, at 8 months, you could, well, I guess maybe you'd have to put it in an incubator and whatever, and to keep it alive so it can't do on its own. So I guess not. I don't know. I'm just saying, when is it functionally capable of surviving outside on its own? Is that the line we're drawing? And
well,
then, and then
if you set a child out at 2 weeks, that's 2 weeks old, and you set it out, it dies if there's not a person taking care of it.
Right, but it's not because it's not breathing.
Here may be a fundamental flaw in that analysis, and that is,
Okay.
I think whether the decision or the conclusion, if you will, is reached as to whether or not the fetus is, quote unquote, a human being, and whether, living on its own or whatever the nuance that no one's going to care about happens to be, that would require Republicans to believe in science, which they don't.
Nah, I disagree with you on that.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm telling you, a lot of flat earthers are a Democrat. I'm just saying.
That's probably true. There's a lot of Democrats that are awfully dumb.
There are a lot of every people that are awfully dumb.
Right, that is the conclusion that,
Including lawyers.
Cheers to that.
I'm always the argumentarian here, and I'm always like, I don't think people are in general that stupid. I think that they are. I agree with they're conditioned to not think. I'll agree with that, but I don't think it's a lack of capability. It's just like the further we get into this, the further we get into especially the local politics game, I totally understand why people don't care. It takes too much fucking work to try to understand what's in front of you.
Yeah.
But it's not that.
What's the alternative, Seth?
Say again?
What's the alternative, Seth? We just, we just walk aimlessly like zombies through the world and let everyone else, well, not everyone else, but those who actually do give a shit, let them make the decisions, and then we either follow it or we bitch about it but don't actually do anything.
Well, that's the Board of Health situation right now in a nutshell.
Perfect.
I mean, it is. I mean, that is literally the argument of the Board of Health thing right now. If you're paying attention to it, that's my point. Is I'm not. I have.
I'm not either.
I don't. Let's see here. What's the word?
Apathetic.
No, I was definitely apathetic for a long time. But for me, I don't consider myself to be like next level smart. I give myself an average, and whatever. Like IQ is a bad word. Whatever. I would put myself in the middle of the road. I am capable of understanding this. And for the sake of this show and whatever, probably lockdown boredom, if nothing else, I started getting further into it. It's not that hard to understand. I mean, I think, AC made a great point, like way long time ago. It's like, like I got the football game on in the background here, right? Like college football I can't do as well, but like, Max and I have a fantasy football team that we share, and we have all these stats and all these numbers and this super complex game that, for whatever reason, is interesting and exciting to us, and so we can know all the nuances. We can know the expected numbers, and we can have all the little number crunchers that are better than us tell us all what we need to know about this, that, and the other in our fantasy football league, or just watching the NFL in general. We are capable as a constituency to understand and keep up with a very complex system and follow it. We just choose to follow football instead of follow what our government does. Because I don't want to say politics, because I think politics is part of what is, I feel like, is almost an intentional muddying, or it's an intentional distraction from what's actually going on.
Well, it's not sexy. I mean, nobody, except for maybe nerdy lawyers and nerdy accountants or nerdy whoever's. The average person doesn't want to stand around the water cooler in the morning, on a Monday and talk about, who got nominated to the state Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, or, the kangaroo court. They'd rather talk about, did the Titans win? Did the Vols win? Nobody wants to talk about it. They don't.
Well, right, but I think one of those things too, because I remember back in the bar days, rule number one at the bar was you don't talk politics, you don't talk religion. That was a rule for the staff, at least. If people were talking, and if two people sitting in the bar were talking about it together, you kept an eye on them, like it was a cautious thing that you paid attention to, because in my experience, nothing causes more fights than politics, religion, and Hooters girls. And
politics, religion. What was the last one?
Hooters girls.
Oh, don't leave out the girls at Twin Peaks.
Well, I didn't have they didn't exist yet when I was still in the bar game. So I didn't have
Oh,
them. But I mean,
it's a long
realistically,
time.
Max and I's, a friend of Max and I's, well, I mean, Max used to work at Hooters, but a friend of his that was with Hooters well after he was and still is, yeah? Do you know?
Say again?
Is Will still at Hooters?
No, he left Hooters after 19 years.
Okay. Anyway, like we went into Twin Peaks one year out here, and like every girl that worked there was one of his Hooters girls. So they all left Hooters to go work there. So it's essentially the same thing. But my point being is that I think one of the that idea that politics starts fights, which is true, but that politics starts fights, and so that we can't talk about it. That's a problem. We should be able to talk about it. We should be able to fight about it peacefully. And I view the fights, man, that we should be able to argue, heatedly discuss whatever words you want to use, not actually physically, not throw punches because you hate Trump and I like Trump or whatever. That shouldn't be the end result. But the fact that we are not allowed to talk about it because we can't, or when we do talk about it, it's this cesspool that is Twitter and Facebook and shit like that, that we can't have nuanced conversation about it. Because when we do, it turns into the cesspool, whether we want to or not. That's one of the problems to me. I think if it wasn't an automatic, you're a bad person for being on the other team, for lack of a better word. Like if we hated each other, like if as Tennessee fans, we hated Florida fans, like Democrats hate Republicans, then we couldn't talk football anymore either. I guess is what my point.
Well, no. You're wrong, because I think that Florida fans and Tennessee fans are more civil than far right and a far left person talking.
Right, that's my point. If Florida fans and Tennessee fans interacted like Democrats and Republicans did, then you couldn't go to a Florida game as a Tennessee fan. It would be one of those where you had to take your colors off walking in the door kind of shit. And then what is football is gone. Because that's one of the things to me. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, like shifting subject a little bit. I think one of the reasons why this social justice thing that's inside sports right now is so off-putting is because we're losing our escape. Because this is the only conversation we're allowed to have anymore, and it's so exhausting. And I want to watch a football game and not think about stuff for 3 hours, and I can't. Even inside the Tennessee game, one of the Tennessee players that was active in the march they did at UT about making sure they have more professors of color and staff of color or whatever, and they're doing stuff about diversity at UT. One of the players, they had a little bumper segment about one of the players on the team who was an active leader in that group, which I think is fantastic. I'm not saying he shouldn't do that, but that's not why I watch football.
Well, at the end of the day, all the jobs in America are 50% owned by African Americans. They'll be happy. The only problem is we only have 13% African Americans in the United States, so only 13.5% of the jobs could be black.
I don't know. I mean,
What?
yeah. The equality of outcome conversation versus.
I'm saying if you're talking about equality, you can't say that a majority of the people are black because the population does not dictate that.
Right, but even if the population, even if the industry in question mirror the populace, your point is that even if we had a 13% business ownership that mirrored the actual population, it wouldn't be enough, is what you're saying. It has to be 50%, even though that's not proper statistics.
Why is that?
I don't know, Max. Why is that?
Well, why is that? I don't know why that is, but it is.
Why is that is?
Okay. Solid statistics backing that up.
No,
Okay,
I get
let me
it.
back you up. Watch any national NBC, ABC, whatever news program. Is 13% of the anchors black? No, it's not.
It's more than.
It's more than. It's 50% or higher. And they are doing that because there's a whole. I mean, look at the NBC show.
I don't think it's 50% or higher, but I think it is significantly larger proportion than the populace. I agree with you.
Day,
You're talking about Jenna
back
and
in the
Hoda.
day,
Yeah, that's
you had-
50-50.
So why is that a problem? That's the part that I don't understand.
Say again?
I said, why is that a problem? That's the point that I don't quite understand.
Why is it a problem?
He's not. No, okay, let me try to help you out here, Max. It's not that Max is saying that it is a problem. It's that actual representation isn't enough, and that's what. And if equal representation was enough, then for the most part, in a lot of places we're already there. In some places we're not, but in a lot of places we're already there or above proportion of diversity in job types. Not all places, but in a number of places. But even though we're above in a number of places, there's still the complaint that there's not enough, is what Max is trying to say, I think.
Well, and just sort of interjecting as a civil rights attorney who obviously practiced employment law as a predominant part of my practice, is my view on employment law and all the statutes that have been passed from an anti-discrimination standpoint are not intended to boost the number of minorities or those who fall into a particular category in the job ranks. It is to make it a level playing field so that the candidate who is best qualified is the one who's chosen for that position and isn't excluded because membership in a protected class. So,
I think that's one of those things that's hijacked in rhetoric. I think that's one of those things that's hijacked in rhetoric, and that people, that the media and other people in politics and stuff hijack exactly what you're saying, but they say that it's they're trying to make you take people that you don't want to work there or whatever. I think that's a rhetoric.
No,
I know, I'm agreeing.
They're just to dovetail on your point is there's no affirmative action when it comes to, for example, Title VII, which protects employees on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. It's not that you have to take in your workforce a certain amount of African Americans or Latinos or females. It's not about that. It's simply saying, you don't get a black mark that's become an incendiary term, so that's probably not the term to use. But you don't start out behind the pack because you have one of these protected characteristics. We all are on the same plane. So if for anchors out there in the mainstream media, if 60% are African American women, then I certainly would hope that would mean it's because of all the applicants, 60% of African American women are the best candidates.
Right. That would be the hope.
I agree with that. But so go to the NFL coaching. So we had 3 black head coaches, 32 teams. You're roughly a little bit less than 10%, right? So there was a whole movement of why don't we have more African American black coaches? Well, okay. So it's the reason. So if we go to 4 black coaches, we're over the demographic population of the United States for African American. So we're over that 13% now. So why? What's the problem? So you're saying that we need to have more black coaches because why?
Because there's so many players that are black, and that's where that argument is based on. Is that if there's
so me being a white person, I should argue, why do we not have more white players?
Potentially, yes, that would be the argument, but
because they're not the most qualified players,
right?
Why wouldn't you use them?
Right, but why isn't
not qualified players? Isn't it easy to say there's not qualified coaches?
Right.
No, that's racist.
Right, and because go ahead, Jamie.
I'm not the world's best NFL fan. I watch from time to time, but maybe you all can educate me. One of you can. Is not the Rooney Rule? Isn't that based in the collective bargaining agreement between the players and the NFL that the two sides agreed that for coaching hires there has to be at least one African American candidate considered?
Yes.
In every isn't that
essentially
contractual?
Yes. Yeah. Essentially, it's if you're hiring a head coach, you have to at least interview a black one.
Yeah, so that's down in the contract. So that's outside.
Well, why is that? Do they have to interview a white person?
No.
You broke up a little bit there, Max. I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
No, they could absolutely
white person.
interview 7 black coaches and not have to interview a single white one by rule.
Why is that?
Because they didn't. The rule wasn't to try to encourage more black or white coaches because they had plenty.
That is an affirmative action rule, but it's bound in contract because
Right.
the two contracting parties wanted to do that. It's not based in federal or state anti-discrimination law. It's the parties agreed.
Right.
Well,
It's a private industry putting a rule in place. It's not the government forcing them to do so, but it's still, I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, it's really not any different than if there was a collective bargaining agreement between, fast food chain and, the fast food workers union, which I can't think of the name of it. Maybe that is the name of it. Wherein if the parties agree, well, the minimum wage is going to be $15 per hour. Well, obviously that's not consistent with federal wage and hour law, but the parties decide between the two of them that for whatever reason that works best for them. So, who is the outside public to intervene? It's really no different.
Well, that's because anybody on the outside doesn't have a problem with it because because of their class of whatever their man, woman, or race, they're included in that. But me as a white person, if I want to be a head coach in the NFL, now that I don't have to be interviewed, they don't have to interview any white people. Well, how is that equality?
Right, but JB's point is that it is a policy inside a private company. It's not a legal thing. It's not the law making them do so.
But the thing is, if that private company was saying we are only going to interview white people,
there would be a legal issue.
That would be a legal issue, right? You can't contract around federal anti-discrimination law. So no, you can't do that. I mean, if you can want more protection, that's fine. You can't give less protection. That doesn't work.
So they can. So do you think there would be a problem if the NFL said you must interview a white coach? Do you think anybody was pissed off?
Would they be pissed off? I don't know, and I don't necessarily think that would be discriminatory on its face, as long as that doesn't come to the exclusion of African American coaches. I mean, again, to go back to the fast food analogy, is yes, the parties can contract for a $15 minimum wage, but they can't contract for a $5 minimum wage because that violates federal wage and hour law. So you can't provide less protection in the contract than is provided by federal law, but you can provide more.
Well, you would be wrong in that. They could contract that as long as they don't deal with credit cards or don't deal with products made outside the state they live in. Because we already went through the labor department.
Does not apply, correct. But that is a very small exception that is not going to exempt a large fast food industry. That would never fall within that. So nice try on that one, Max, but that's a very small exception.
That's correct, because we dealt with that when we had our labor audit. The first thing she asked, she was like, do you buy products from outside the state of Tennessee? We were like, yes. And she said, do you process credit cards? And we said, yes. And she said, because of those two things, you fall under the federal labor laws.
Right, because you're interstate commerce.
Right, because
interstate commerce, exactly. And I said, so if we just sold beer and that was only in Tennessee and didn't take credit cards, cash only, she's like, we would have nothing to do with you.
Except we have a Facebook page.
As long as you, exactly. As long as you don't advertise on the quote-unquote World Wide Web, and as long as you don't make more than $500,000 per year.
So that was something.
Enterprise liability.
That was something that we talked about last time, Jamie, that I wanted to follow up on. Is like, what is the point of the Supreme Court? I mean, because the way you explained it to me is that that's the Supreme Court giving jurisdiction federally on these particular issues. Like, what is, like, I get it in the sense that yes, anybody from anywhere can see our Facebook page, so that means that we are crossing state lines, even though we really technically do no business on our end. Yes, we buy shit from other states, but again, using the example of we only do things through local distributors and we only do things for local customers, even though we use the internet because you have to function as a business in this day and age, or you have to take credit cards, either one of those. Like, what's the point of that? Like, what is the intent for that jurisdiction to pull federally instead of staying local?
Well, if I understand your question, the rationale for Congress in passing those laws, and for example, the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 that we're talking about, wage and hour, which deals with minimum wage and overtime payments, is to have a uniform law that applies throughout the country, unless there's a very narrow exception, because as far as the FLSA is concerned, that goes back to the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, and that Congress reserves the authority to regulate interstate commerce. So if you as a business are engaged in interstate commerce, well, that's
right.
Because,
but I get my question being, what about like what we do specifically? Again, I get it that we import products. If we take the import product side out of it, there's nothing that we do that's really interstate commerce. Yes, we use the internet. Yes, we use credit cards, but we don't, unless it is an actual, like a Kentucky resident that's passing through, or like we've had people on their way to Florida from Ohio, because that's what Knoxville's good for, is a stop on your way from Ohio to Florida. That come in, but realistically, we don't actually engage in interstate commerce on the retail side. Yes, on the wholesale side we do, but just for just for the conversation's sake, let's pretend that we don't. Let's pretend that we get everything in state. Again, from the Fair Labor Standards Act or whatever you're talking about, what is the federal government's want to be in my business because I technically operate just locally?
Well, because when the Constitution was drafted, the Commerce Clause was included, and quite frankly, the federal government in general, and I'm not talking about the FLSA in particular, but just in general, wants to grab as much power as they can.
Okay, that was my assumption. I just didn't know if you knew. Right, I didn't know if you had there if there were any particular. That's what it feels like to me. It feels like the central authority kind of game, and as especially as the internet grew and stuff like that, that the federal government saw that as an opportunity to bring more things under their umbrella and away from the local and the state governments.
Well, let's take that back for a minute, Seth, because we were talking about the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court, and she's a textualist, and she, based off of her historical jurisprudence and that judicial philosophy, she looks to the text. Well, let's look to the text of the Fair Labor Standards Act, and looking also at the legislative history behind it. 1938, we're in the throes still of the Great Depression, and the idea in Congress at the time was, okay, in order to get sort of a baseline for employees to not be abused and working 80 hours a week for a dime a day, then we're going to regulate how much you can work an employee without paying them a certain amount. And so that was the rationale behind it. I mean, I'm certainly, trying to distill it down as much as possible, but that's the thought process, whether you agree with it or not. So then, you have someone like Judge Barrett, who is going to look at that text, that there's a challenge to it, for example, under the Interstate Commerce Clause, under the Commerce Clause, and say, okay, well, here's what the text actually says. It says interstate commerce. Well, what does interstate commerce mean? And there's a definition I don't have in front of me of that. And yeah, if you Seth, if you have a business and wherein you're located in Tennessee, your landlord is in Tennessee, you can put all of your signs down I-75 and I-40 going, through Knoxville and the surrounding counties. You advertise in, let's say, the phone book, if that's still a thing. I don't know. I call it paper Google, but in any event, you do that. You get all of your beer, all of your products from inside the state of Tennessee, and you take all cash. You're good to go, because the government, the federal government, does not have the right to regulate you. But just going back to that original text of the Fair Labor Standards Act and commerce. And again, the reasons therefore that's why it exists and why it's still it's upheld as being constitutional.
Right.
When was that? Do you know?
The Fair Laborers Act is the 20s?
Yeah.
38.
30s?
1938. Mm-hmm.
So
It's Sam
38
busting out. Sam nailed that. Sam said it. He was just leaning off mic.
I didn't think he was here yet.
Yeah, he's been here.
In
Like
38,
always.
there was not credit cards.
Right.
So they've just
Right, so but again, it's just right. Credit cards logically technically fall under it because the credit card processor or somebody of that nature is not in the state of Tennessee. One of the banks that handles it in this, that, or the other, is not in the state of Tennessee, and so the federal government has that as an excuse. Because at the end of the day, it's a body. It's a body at work that wants everything it can to be under its umbrella, and so when it has an excuse to, when a new emergent technology comes out, if the definition of that new technology can fall under interstate commerce, they're going to take it. That's the moral of the story. All right, Jamie, you're fired. Get off my show.
In the 1930s, they didn't care who, if you borrowed money from Kentucky to operate a business in Tennessee.
Right. Well, they might have, but for different reasons at the time. All right, Jamie, you're fired. Get off my show. You're not fired. We need you as to stay as our corporate lawyer, but you have better things to do than dribble on for another hour with us.
Oh, can I ask him one question?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've got great things to go to sleep. So I appreciate.
Oh, that's a shitty excuse. Well, time out. Sam has something specifically for you before you go.
I've been curious with John Roberts when he was admitted to the Supreme Court. He went in as the Supreme Court or the Supreme Justice or the Chief Justice. Didn't know if that was uncommon. For some reason, I just thought it was kind of odd at the time when he became a Chief Justice. Just coming on to the Supreme Court. It's not? Okay.
It's not, because here's the thing is back in 2005, initially Justice Henry O'Connor had announced her retirement, and President Bush at the time nominated then Judge Roberts from the D.C. Circuit to succeed her upon her retirement. Well, as fate may have had it at the time, Chief Justice Rehnquist, during the pendency of Judge Roberts' confirmation hearing, died. So at that point in time, President Bush pulled Judge Roberts' nomination and renominated him as Chief Justice. Now, that is not without historical precedent. That has occurred many times with Chief Justice Rehnquist at the time. He had not started off as the Chief Justice. He had been nominated as an Associate Justice and confirmed as an Associate Justice under the Nixon administration. And then later on, I believe under Reagan, if memory serves, he was elevated to Chief Justice. But as far as someone coming in to the Supreme Court brand new, if you will, and becoming the Chief Justice, no, that I don't have the statistics in front of me, but that has happened many, many times.
Gotcha. I just didn't know if there was precedence on it. Just thought it was kind of odd. I would assume, if it would be someone that was already on the court, they would then be elevated to the Chief Justice.
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd circumstance, but that has been that way for many, many, many generations. So it's kind of is what it is. So
oh, wait, I know. Hold on, I lied. I got one more question I gotta have.
All right, fine.
What is the so there's a lot of talk right now if your boy Biden wins that they're going to stack the court, meaning they're going to add justices and Biden will get to nominate said justices to take the power back, quote unquote. Because what constitutionally we start out with what, 6, 5?
I don't recall. I don't know off the top of my head.
But I guess I don't know. All right. Well, anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there with you before you went. But if it's out of your realm of knowledge, then I need not grill you further.
Well, I think if I recall correctly, and again, I could be wrong, but my recollection is the number of justices is set by federal law, and I know there was at least one time in history where there was an attempt to engage in court packing. And that was during Franklin Roosevelt's administration. We just were talking about the Great Depression. But one of the problems, quote unquote, that President Roosevelt was facing was that all of his New Deal initiatives kept getting smacked down by the court, that court at that time was primarily Republican appointed conservative justices who didn't have any interest in the New Deal.
Because the New Deal is not particularly constitutional, but anyway.
Well, I mean, you can argue one way or the other, but we can definitely argue it's liberal. So let's go with that. And as you may know, President Roosevelt, in order to get his way, he said, okay, basically you can get your shit together, or I'm going to make moves with, and I believe he had a Democratic House and Senate at the time, and I could stand corrected.
Right.
We're just going to pack the fucking court, and you can just be in the minority, so screw you. And the phrase that has remained time immemorial is a switch in time save 9. And so the justices, fearing, in essence, that their own sway on the court would be diminished to the point of being
irrelevant,
useless. Right, that all of a sudden they're like, oh, just kidding. Actually, that is constitutional. That's fine. So at this point in time, I don't know what the legal mechanisms are in order to change that, but it is something that apparently the Democrats are considering. How seriously, I don't know. Now, one issue that was brought forth, I can't remember if it was yesterday, if it was on Thursday, but a congressman whose name escapes me at the moment from California has proposed introducing term limits for Supreme Court justices for 18 years. Now that, in my reading of the Constitution, that would require a constitutional amendment. You can't just do that by congressional statute passed by the president. So
right.
That's something that's going to be kind of interesting to watch, whether either one of those issues comes to the forefront and actually is attempted. So don't know, but certainly it'll be must-see TV, if you will.
Yeah, because there's that, and then there's add-in states as the other Democrat move that they're talking about right now. But anyway, go about your life. We really appreciate you. It was fun.
All right, guys.
We're not paying for this. It's not billable hours.
Yeah, well, I got to bill somebody for it, so I got to go find somebody.
All right. Well, you bill the county. They'll pay. They don't pay attention.
All right, roger that.
All right, man. Thanks, Jamie. Have a great night. All right. So get rid of that guy. He's boring anyway. So I don't know. Now what?
Football.
So glad we got rid of him.
I know. He's so boring. And like knows things. It's so lame.
Well, I think it's funny that we believe him on everything he said just because he's a lawyer. Like, you're like, oh, I believe you.
I mean,
he could have been just bringing up like random shit, like, but it's funny how, you're in a waiting room and a guy walks in with a coat and he says he's a doctor. You believe him and you trust him.
It's true.
It's like, I don't need anything. A guy pulls you over with red lights and a uniform on. You're like, oh, he's a cop.
See, I don't know if I play that. Like that game. I don't play anymore. I don't just pull over. I go somewhere. I don't just pull over the side of the road.
Like, where do you go? Like police department?
Gas station somewhere with other people at least, or someplace that's going to have cameras or something on it.
So you can film you getting beat up.
Yeah. I mean, my white privilege will show and I won't get beat up, but I'm not gonna, I mean, it's like, like we've joked about it. It's like I could go out and buy everything I need and I could have a cop car for all intents and purposes. And I can go flashlights. And it's something that like, okay, cause like one of the things that pisses me off is Knox County Sheriff's Office has like 3 of them now. They have their ghost cars. They have they have at least one black one and one white one that I've seen. Maybe they have more than one of each. I can't tell the difference in the black or white ones there, but it's a Charger or whatever, and it's all white, and they've got some cool paint decal thing where you can't really see it except from like certain angles. Yeah. Like if the light hits it right, you can see the sheriff's logo, but for the most part, it's just a white Charger. Badass looking. In fairness, it's a badass looking car, but that kind of shit is just like undercut. Like I don't know, undercover cars. They do that kind of shit all the time. They've got non-plated and non-decaled cruisers, and I don't think that's. I think that is gross it's just a gross abuse of power to me that they can that just some car with lights on it and you're supposed to pull over. And it's like, dude, man, I'm not trying to be a dick here, but I made you follow me for 10 miles because there was nothing here.
Yeah.
I'm out in the middle of fucking nowhere. I'm going to keep going until there's a gas station or something that I'm pulling over at. I'm not just going to pull over the side of the road because nothing about your car says cops except lights on it. And I can go by lights anywhere. You can go by lights anywhere. Anybody can do it. It's the same thing with the same thing we talked about with the no-knock warrant things and shit like that. It's like, oh, well, if they kick in your door and scream police, then you're not going to defend yourself. No. I don't give a fuck what you're yelling coming in the door. You're kicking my door in. I'm not assuming you're anything.
Yeah.
You know,
sure.
and
Only police would kick a door down.
Right. And only police would yell police when they come in. There's no way some random person could yell police. They wouldn't know that they could say police and I would stop.
Yeah, it's an extreme example of what you were just talking about. They kind of juxtaposed, the ghost version of a police vehicle, and then
Like the stock version of that same car.
Well, no, they went to like the European model of, kind of like the British and I think it was like a Swedish version. They had like all sorts of like the reflective tape going all down it. Like, talking about just people being able to like find a police officer if there's trouble.
Right. Like, I don't mind the idea.
What's that blank car, and then I've got this, other car that's obviously a police car.
Right. I don't mind the idea of like an unmarked in the sense that you're a detective and you're going out to do like detective work. You're not pulling people over. You're not interacting. You're plain clothes. You're not. Your job inside the police department is not to do the normal interaction.
Yeah.
But pulling people over, pulling people over, like that kind of shit. That's just it's intentionally misleading, and it's intentional. Like, I mean, I remember a couple years ago.
That's part of how they make their money.
Yeah, and that's I'll go back into that. Remind me of that. The KPD, I think it was the KPD chief. This is a while back. I don't think it's the current chief. Was talking about how they were having to argue with the city, with the city council about a certain funding thing because they presented their budget and they're like, oh, well, this is a little bit high. Let's see what we can work out. And one of the things on his budget was some ungodly millions of dollars to put new light bars on all the cop cars because there's like with all the LED technology coming out and shit like that. Like, you remember the old light bars were like a foot thick.
Right. It was obvious whenever you had a cop behind
you could just see it from the silhouette, this huge thing, where the new light bars are
1 inch thick.
Right. And they, like if you're not really paying attention, it's like a roof rack almost size wise. And so it's like, well, and I mean, literally the KPD, the chief at the time on the news talking about it, it's like, we need these so we're less obvious. The fuck? Really? Like that's your intent?
What you led with?
Right. Your intent is to be less obvious.
Now they're like, oh, it would save money.
Yeah, so Kyle was in here Monday, and it was an interesting thing. He was like, he was talking about his, his orientation kind of thing, getting to meet the different department heads and kind of getting to walk through, and they did like a mock session to get everybody used to like where they sit and like, the procedural shit, like, how to, you can't just interrupt and start talking. You have to like,
chime in.
You have to, whatever, that kind of shit. And he was like, he's like, I had a thought. He's like, kind of doing a soft survey on it right now. I might get a little bit more like realistic with it. But one of the things he was talking about was like the school resource officers that look like sheriffs, but they're not. He's like, well, what if we put them in the sheriff's office? Because one of the things that's part of it that I didn't realize, and he was saying I didn't realize until I was talking to him, is that the sheriff's office bonds them. So the sheriff's office is liable for their actions, but they're not under the sheriff's office. Huh. So the sheriff's... Say again?
Said that's interesting.
Yeah, and so he's like, well, one of the things he was talking to the sheriff about was that the sheriff's having a hard time in the summer with staffing. And this is the way he said it was that they have more need over the summer. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And he's like, I'm not exactly sure now that you question it. And I was like, because I'd be curious to know if there's more crime in the summer and if that crime coincides with the fact that the kids are out of school, or is it there's more activities going on. They have different festivals and events and all that kind of shit. And so you need more security for different events and more traffic control coming out of, Brewers Jam or, Market Square festivals, all the different stuff that goes on.
Well,
it's probably really what they need.
It couldn't be compared to UT like home games, right? In the wintertime or the fall.
Well, I mean, on those Friday, Saturday for home games, yeah, that's probably the max need. But you have city and county working together on it. But I think his point was that the sheriff's office has need for some extra bodies during the summer, and all the school guys are off during the summer.
Yeah,
Put them under the umbrella of the sheriff's office, which takes them out of the school budget, which gives the school budget more room to work with, and which means the county has to make up that budget for the sheriff's office. To which I said, then all we do is get more tickets.
If they're already liable for what they do on, school grounds under the county, how are they not just under the county?
It's just where the paycheck comes from at this point. And then there's some other issues, like one of the other issues you talk about, like if something happens, like a student brings a weapon, like a real weapon to school that's like actually a threat or something like that, you have to go through multiple chain of commands. So the resource officer is going through the principal and the school in the school system part of things, and essentially for all intents and purposes, it's not going directly to the sheriff's office. It's going to the 911, and then it goes into the sheriff's office and shit like that. And he's like, one of the things that could clean up some of that communication chain. But I mean, yeah, realistically, it would take it out of the school budget, give the schools more money to work with, because they wouldn't be paying for it, but we as county residents would, and they'd make that up somewhere. To which my joke was, oh, well, shit, that just means I get more tickets.
So what to break it down simply is the only difference between a school resource officer and the Knox County deputy is where they're getting their paychecks?
No, no, there's plenty more than that. They don't have a school resource officer has a lot less authority over over most situations. A school resource officer couldn't come to my house, even though I'm a county resident, and do a wellness check or do like if we're having a big rowdy party or whatever, and my neighbor calls and says they're being loud, and they call the police, a sheriff would come out here and be like, hey, you guys need to turn it down or whatever.
Yeah.
A school resource officer can't do that. They don't have the authority to do that. If my school resource officer showed up, I'd be like, come on, man, come have a beer. He has no authority or jurisdiction because it's off the school grounds, among other things.
So what is the county? You said the county was responsible for
financially, not directly. Like if something were to happen, and let's say some guy grabs some 12-year-old titty or something like that. Some school resource officer gets a little handsy with one of the students, and it goes sideways, and they get sued. It would go against the bond that the sheriff's office holds on those officers, not against the school system. That kind of shit.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So their responsibility if they fuck up the sheriff's department.
I mean, yeah, but situationally, I mean, it depends what the fuck up is, but yeah, on some level, yes. But it's not like that the sheriff can't fire him either. Can't be like, oh, you can't do this job anymore. They're employees of Knox County Schools. So I talked to my resource officer about it. He's like, well, we get paid the same as teachers, not money wise, but we get paid in the same format. We get an annual salary, and they pay us throughout the year. We just don't work over the summer, same way teachers do.
What's the point of the bond then?
I don't know. It's an insurance thing, I guess. I don't know.
But why would Knox County not hold the bond? Why would the sheriff's department hold the bond? That's what I'm confused about.
I don't know. I really don't. It was probably some budgetary kind of bullshit back in the day. It was some way to shift budget around.
And I'm sure Kyle Ward has no idea.
Yeah.
Probably some weird contract thing. They're like, all right, well, you guys got to pay them, but if they do anything bad, you guys got to cover the shit.
Yeah.
You'll be liable for them.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I'm assuming,
or maybe it's if they're
the sheriff's department that does the training.
Maybe it's
well, we didn't train this guy.
Right. Maybe it's some sort of the school system put him in a sheriff deputy uniform. And they're like, well, if they're gonna look like us, we better make sure they do shit right. I don't know. I really don't know. So on further conversation with Kyle Warden, when Kyle and Courtney came in on Monday, and we made sure that we kept them separated, and it was weird because I had to make sure I didn't break sunshine law. So I'm still not exactly sure what transpired on Monday's meeting last week, because Kyle was one of the two that were putting in the some sort of oversight on this Board of Health situation that's a shit show. And I guess one of the resolutions coming out on Monday as they debate over actually either dissolving the Board of Health or changing their jurisdictional authority and all kind of other bullshit, is at least temporarily they're going to put a non-medical community member volunteer on the Board of Health.
Mm-hmm.
And I fucked up and volunteered. Like I totally did it as a joke, mostly to just have fodder to talk about on here. And so the ad for it said just contact your county commissioner. And so I emailed Kyle and Courtney just for funnies. And I was like, hey guys, I want to do this. That's all I said.
They'll pull some strings to get you on there.
And they both said, they both are like, well, here, email to this one. And you know, or no, I'm sorry. I got an email back from a secretary or something like that it works for the commission. It's like, respond to me with your kind of, your letter, for lack of a better word. Pitch. And, and why you want to do this or whatever. And I was like, shit, I don't really want to do it. And then as I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, maybe I do want to do this. And so, like I literally, here's my letter I wrote to the Board of Health. I said, so I initially sent my application as a farce, thinking I could say I tried and abdicate my responsibility by putting forth effort and turn the whole experience into fodder for my podcast. But I decided I should actually explain why I do feel my experience and knowledge could actually be useful in this capacity. One, I have over a decade of experience in bar and restaurant industry in Knoxville, both on the strip, air quotes, and elsewhere, so I know what it's like to depend on that income, especially on campus where UT football's record can make the difference on my personal financial planning. Two, I am a city of Knoxville small business owner, so I, in real time, am adjusting and shifting my business to the changes in the current economy, which is totally fucking bullshit. I'm just doing what I've always done. Three, I am a parent of Knox County school kids. Four, I am not an ideologue. I am willing to listen listen regardless of my personal feelings. Five, and probably most importantly, I am aware of my intellect. If the board wishes to make recommendations and I can't understand the reasoning behind it, the data involved in coming to this conclusion, not the actions of the board, nor the actions the board is wishing to enact. If that is the case, the board should rethink their strategy in order to inform the public about their decision in a way that is clear and understandable to the public in order to minimize confusion from the public and achieve the most cooperation and greatest results. And yes, I do intend to use this for fodder for my podcast. I hope you can see that I do not wish to make a mockery of the board nor the county government. Rather, my goal in this action, as well as my podcast, is to help clear the fog from the public so we can all be more engaged and invested in our community to see Knox County prosper. Thank you. And so then I get an email back, and it's like, be here Monday at 5. Fuck. So I got to go.
You're like a fuck you, and then they were like.
So I got to go. So I'm going in Monday at 5 to be interviewed in person by the commission for this position.
And most of those people you've interviewed, so.
Right. I mean, three of the 8 I know personally. I mean, I've met personally and have been on the show. Courtney, Kyle, and Daisha.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so I will certainly let the audience know as this thing goes. I mean, I may literally ask if I'm allowed to record, the last couple of Board of Health meetings have been Zoom meetings anyway. Yeah. So I'll be sitting here and I can record those, and I'm going to state that that's my intent. It's public record anyway. I don't think they can do anything about it. I could do it, whether I'm on the board or not. I could record those meetings and use them inside the podcast legally.
Especially since we're not monetized, so
right?
Even if we're profiting off of it.
But even if we were, it doesn't matter.
I would think it would.
No, because it's public record. It's the same thing as, if Trump stands on the street corner and screams, anybody taping it can use that however they want to. Yeah. So, I mean, I'll be clear. I'll make sure to talk to the law director about it and just double check it. But honestly, I mean, if I do get it, I will intentionally be promoting the show on it. Jennifer, I'll need to have some T-shirts made, so that every time I show up at a Board of Health meeting, I'll be in almost an agreement T-shirt, maybe a hat.
She's not listening right now because she fell asleep on the ride home, but I'm home and I got to unload a bunch of shit, so I got to jump off too.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you calling in. I hope everything went well at your event today.
Yep, it did. It went really awesome.
Good. Well, all right, man. I'll touch base with you tomorrow. I'll probably be at the news store for a little bit trying to. I got a TV today, so we'll put that in. I'll bring that over tomorrow. We'll have to order a stand or whatever.
All right, cool beans.
Later, man. All right. Bye. Be careful. Well, be careful. You're at home. Fuck, I'm an idiot. Anyway,
Careful pulling stuff in.
yeah, don't burn yourself on the shit.
Don't hurt yourself.
Well, that didn't work out right at all. I brought Jamie in.
Lift with your legs, not with your bag.
I brought Jamie in to cover because I didn't think he was gonna. I didn't think Max is gonna be a part of the show because of the event. And then it happens that I get both of them on, and then you're running late, and then now it's just me and you for the end.
Oh.
Yeah, sucks for you guys listening, but we're gonna keep going.
Save the worst for last. I mean, save the best for last.
That's right. So, I don't know. What's new, buddy? How's work?
Oh, it's going swimmingly.
Yeah, how's your boss? Is he any good?
There's a couple of them that are assholes, but thankfully I don't have to see them too much.
Yeah. No, you had to work with one of them for a whole shift.
Yeah, kind of blew my mind too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he pretty much stayed in the corner and just let me do my business.
I mean, on the real, like realistically, I don't know shit in there anymore.
I'm picking up bits and pieces.
I mean, it's just. I mean, I don't know. It's just. It's good. It's great. That's what. It's not that I don't want to know things. It's that.
So we've got some new stuff in. There's just like little intricate things,
right?
Of like accessories of
you know,
new
and
items.
that's what the Ant-Man's for. That's why we have him, and that's why we pay him the way we pay him, because he deals with it. But goddamn, he's an angry little kid. He called me shitting his fucking pants this afternoon.
Oh yeah, I left him alone with us.
I meant to talk to Max about that.
He was just like, "Son of a, I can't do my job."
It's like I get it, I get it, and
Right.
and it's. What's weird about it is it's not a new problem.
Some of you guys just need to like threaten the banks.
I mean, we've talked to him about it. It's just it's part of the thing. I mean, so I don't know if you guys heard it. There was a siren going by, and I stepped out to go see if it was stopping in front of the house here, because it did sound like it at the time. And so Max was talking a little bit about how, like, you know, some of the interstate BS about like hemp and CBD and kind of the shit we're dealing with. And so, you know, it's a sucky spot that we're in as a business, because I've got to deal with a bank that's willing to deal with me. I don't do anything illegal. I'm not doing anything wrong. Everything we do is by the books. But since we deal in CBD and hemp products, banks are really wary of us, because they're told to be really wary of us. I'm not exactly sure why, but that structure is in place. And so, like, the bank that the bank that we got for the new store was the fourth bank I tried to start a bank account with. You know, if it was new, if we were brand new, okay. But I mean, we're 6 years old. We're going to do $1 million in sales this year at least in our home store. And if I'm a bank manager and I've got $1 million business coming to me wanting to open an account for a second store with me, why the fuck would you say no? What is the risk? What is your risk with me? And realistically, what's your risk of me with a bank anyway? Even if I'm selling sandals, what's the risk? I can write a bunch of bad checks. How much can I write in bad checks before you figure it out and shut me down? Not enough that's really going to hurt you as a bank.
Right.
And more realistically, not enough that you're not insured for by either an insurance company or by the government. You're insured for these kind of things. That's what you do as a bank. So what is the risk that you're concerned with that I do? And so, and then that on top of the credit card company situations, it's just a stupid headache that doesn't need to be there. Other than the Saint Obama decided that we were a shithole industry and wanted to shit on us, and that persists. And so that's where we are. But I don't know. I want to go back to this Breonna Taylor thing. I don't know. Have you kept up with it in the last couple of days? They fucking murdered a cop rioting.
There was 2 cops that got shot. I thought they were both on the road to recovery.
Now, one's dead. I know that one died.
Really?
I might be wrong. I mean, I say I know, but I'm pretty sure that the story I read on it was that there was a cop killed. Because I mean, it comes down. I mean, like, because and again, like Jamie said, like it's a media issue. If the media sold this correctly, and I say sold this, that may be the worst word, but if they were actually honest with the story, the entire story should have been no-knock warrants are a problem. Because the no-knock warrant is inviting this situation. And yeah, it is a tragedy that Breonna Taylor died. And her family made $12 million off of the process. Not that that's going to make up for their daughter being dead. But they already the county and the police department, or the city and the police department or whatever, they already settled the lawsuit for $12 million plus. They dropped the case against the boyfriend who was shooting back because they didn't feel like they had the grounds to persist that he was trying to kill police officers. They agree that, in my understanding, it may have been political realistically, but at least on paper, the police department was like, we can't pursue a case against him for shooting for attempted murder of a police officer, because he did shoot one, because he didn't necessarily know there were cops coming into his house. So that charge was dropped. The only charge that was handed out on the cops coming in was one charge on one cop who apparently shot too many times, and like two or three bullets went through a wall into a neighboring apartment.
Yeah,
and so it was like a reckless endangerment or wanted disregard or whatever, which, okay, that's something realistically, but I mean, again, like the crime was
but nothing for actually of her death.
Right. But the crime wasn't realistically, the crime isn't on the cops for shooting her. The crime is that they were sent there to kick the door in and go in there, because it goes back to, like, I get the premise of the no-knock warrant in the sense that, like, just to try to support the idea that the no-knock warrant makes sense. Okay, let's if I'm going to argue for it making sense, then I'm going to say we need it because we need to be able to go in there and surprise them, but also capture the scene so that nothing changes on the scene, so that they can't destroy evidence, so that the whatever. And apparently in this one there was like 4 different warrants that were all attached to the same kind of thing. There were like 2 or 3 other places they all went into at the same time in Louisville, all at the same time, because it's all attached to this kind of drug ring thing that her boyfriend was a part of or something like that. And it's like, okay, if you want to capture the evidence of the scene, then I don't know, are they there all the time? Are we going to argue that the only way the scene has all the things, air quotes, needed is if the people are there? So is it that he is carrying the product on him all the time, and so you have to capture him in the apartment to keep the whole case together? That's the only thing that makes sense, because realistically, like, again, in the story as I understand it, it's her ex-boyfriend was the drug kingpin, and he was having mail sent to her house where her and her new boyfriend were living, and her new boyfriend was part of this drug ring. But the ex-boyfriend was the guy, and he was having, I don't know if he was having shit sent from Colorado or whatever to her place, and then he would go pick it up, or her boyfriend would pick it up and then take it to somebody else's place where they'd go distribute.
Yeah, there was one story I read, and I think it might have been the ex-boyfriend that was already in custody at some point, but basically, said that he wasn't going to implicate her when they were trying to get them to implicate her. I don't know if there was actually any involvement.
Right. I mean, so what it seems to me like, it's like, she has bad choice in men, but it doesn't read to me that she actually had any involvement in the conspiracy to distribute narcotics.
Right.
It seems to me that she just has bad choice in men, and that the men in her life did that for a living, and that since she liked since she liked being around her boyfriends, they came to her house and they did some of their business at her house. I get and again, this is all 15th hand news reports.
Did they find anything inside of her now apartment that they did the no-knock warrant on?
I don't know. I hadn't heard anything about that.
You think that would have made the news if
right?
Like, we also confiscated,
right?
Blah, blah,
we
blah,
found
blah.
a significant amount of evidence there. No, but I mean, literally, but like also, again, it's like, what are you after? What are you chasing after? What's the warrant for? Is the warrant for their arrests, or is the warrant for searching the apartment? I don't know the answer to that. Either way, it doesn't make sense. If the warrant's for their arrest, then arrest them in daylight when they're awake. Don't startle them awake and think they're going to be compliant while sleeping. That doesn't make sense. If the warrant's to search the place, wait till they go out and do something. Apparently, the story that I heard is that that was her first day off after like 5 12-hour shifts. They went out to the Texas Roadhouse or something like that, and had a dinner, and then went home and were watching a movie and fell asleep watching a movie. And were woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning by a knock. They did knock first, even though they didn't have to. They did knock, and according to the officers, they did say they were police when they knocked, and then kicked the door in.
I read something of like 13 quote-unquote witnesses. Only one of them said that they heard, the name police mentioned that police
Which again doesn't
identified
fucking
themselves.
matter. I mean, that's just such a stupid. I mean, so what if they did? So what if they didn't? It doesn't change anything.
Right.
Somebody kicked in my door while I'm sleeping. I'm woken up by somebody kicking my door. I'm getting my gun, and then I'm going to answer my door. And then when I turn the corner and see my door with guns pointing at me, I fire and run away. And that is a death sentence for me and the person in the house with me. It doesn't make sense. I mean, to me, the no-knock warrant is inviting the shootout. They want to kill people. They want to, maybe not kill people, but they want the shootout.
I don't think there's any cop that goes to work wanting a shootout.
I'm not saying the cop does, but the warrant does. The cop that's doing the cop that is actually kicking the door in is not the cop that's asking for the warrant. It's a detective. It's the detective that's whoever the head detective is that's putting this whole drug conspiracy thing together with her ex-boyfriends.
I don't think in the writing up of a warrant is any thought in there being any kind of shootout.
No, I mean I agree that that maybe they're not, the people in action aren't doing it, but I mean, again, paint me a picture where it makes sense that that's not going to be the result. You're going to go in you're going to kick in a drug dealer's door, who has guns and drugs. What do you expect happens when you kick in his door?
I mean, hopefully if you can do it fast enough, you can do it before they get to guns, but
I'm just saying, like, what are you, like, okay, hopefully, but I mean, realistically, what do you expect? Because it's not like they didn't know who these people were. They knew who they were. They knew what they did. That's why they got the warrant. They got the warrant because there was cause for it. So what are you trying to do in this scenario that makes sense? Make it make sense for me that this is the right move for this person.
for which person?
For the police department to ask for this warrant. This type of warrant specifically.
As far as a no-knock?
Right. Forget the whole thing that it's probably pot related anyway. I'll bet you $10, which again I haven't heard specifically. I'll bet you $10 that they're pot dealers, not fucking heroin or coke or meth or anything shitty. They're just dealing pot. They've got somebody in Colorado sending them packages of pot, sending them to Brianna's house, and when they get there, they take them to somebody else's house, break them up, and they go and sell them on the street to their friends. Guarantee it. Again, don't know that for a fact, but that's my guess.
That's what I was about to say. You should probably stop saying that if you don't know this to be a fact.
That would be my bet.
You would think if, like we've said, if that was the thing, it would have been on the news already.
Right. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, that's my assumption. I rescind my guarantee.
Yeah, I don't know 100% what their original warrant was for.
I would be willing to wager that they were dealing pot. Either way, that's just fodder on top of the mess. Make it make sense to me. Paint me a picture.
As far as a necessity for a no-knock warrant?
Right. Paint me a picture for a story where a no-knock warrant makes sense. I think I can think of maybe one.
I mean, I would think any kind of situation to where, like with drugs, you could use the argument that, maybe you've saved some lives as far as saving somebody from having an overdose.
Right, but is the no-knock required for that? Could you not go in there with just a regular search warrant when they're not home? Or a regular arrest warrant where you catch them?
Search warrants work when somebody's not there. I don't know if you can still bust down the door and search and just leave a note like, hey, we had a search warrant. We looked through some stuff.
I'm pretty sure you can. I'm pretty sure they're allowed to just, like, if they have a search warrant, they're allowed to enter a property without permission. That's pretty much what a search warrant is. They can go in there whether you want them there or not. And if you're not home, they can go in.
I don't
need a lawyer, Jamie.
Call him back, Jamie. We got a quick question.
I don't know. I'm going to lean on my Law and Order fandom. I'm
That's what I was trying to think. I was like, was there an episode of Law and Order?
I am confident. I am very confident that they're allowed to enter. They're allowed to enter private property with a search warrant, whether you're home or not.
The Law and Order is as much as we would like to think it's factual
Right, it's probably not.
and realistic. Yeah, it's not so much.
Yeah, it's absolutely not so much. But I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure that they're allowed to enter property. I mean, they're allowed to enter property without permission. I mean, fuck. Okay, fine. Even if you have to be there, you knock on the door and say, "Hey, we have a search warrant for this premises. We know you're home. Answer the door."
Right.
Answer the door. Answer the door. Answer the door. Or they're or just sit on the house. And like Jamie said, sit on the house. Post a cop at the front door. Post a cop at the back door. Have a full perimeter on the house so nobody can come or leave.
I don't know if you have to actually provide, that said evidence with the owner to say, hey, we have the right to be here before you just go ahead and are there.
Right. So, but again, let's assume that you have to wait for not permission, but you have to wait for the party to be there. Okay, if they're not there, then you just sit on the house and they never come home.
Right.
Which again, that's why I'm pretty sure that you're allowed to do it anyway, because at some point, if you have a cop just sitting on your stoop, you're never going to come home if you've got a ton of coke on your kitchen table. You're just going to leave and just leave town. But again, if the person's in question, if the actual people in question, you have an arrest warrant for them, arrest them when they're awake, somewhere in public.
Well,
Unless
they do when they're asleep, to lessen the likelihood of that shootout or whatever, to hopefully try to catch them by surprise.
That is the best argument. The only argument that I can actually really get on board with, I think, is that if you had like some sort of human trafficking kind of ring, where you had a house and you knew there was a basement full of people that were held against their will, and that there was always somebody there as the guard, for lack of a better word. And then that's the only premise I can think of that makes a no-knock warrant make real sense. Is you just sit there and you sit on that house and you know there's people in that house. You saw the people go into that house and you know that there's kidnapped kids and whatever like that. But there's also a team of people that are always there and they rotate shifts and you're never going to catch them. You're never going to get all the people. You're never going to get the criminals all outside the house to detain them separately, which I guess you could do one at a time. Eventually, they're going to have to go out for a food run or cigarette run or something like that and grab them
all in one place.
But I'm just saying, like that's the only premise I can think of is that you have
a limited time window.
Right, you have a limited time window in the sense that you have somebody in that house who is the victim, who is getting victimized currently, that you need to get in that house now and with as minimal outside effect as possible. And that's the only thing I can think of that makes a no-knock make sense. I mean, really. Because I'm pretty sure you can enter the property when they're at home. I'm pretty sure if you have the warrant, you can enter the property when they're at home. And I'm pretty sure you could pick them up when they're going to work or they're going to the subway or going to do whatever they do in their real world, where you're going to make it where they're out in the open and have less defendability than their own home. So I don't know. I mean, end of the day, bottom line, no-knock warrants are gross. I think most people agree on it. And the state of Kentucky did kill Breonna Taylor by allowing no-knock warrants.
I think, for the general public, when it's kind of explained in a general way, we're like, oh, well, you're out there trying to stop human trafficking. You're out there trying to stop, drug trafficking.
Right.
Everybody's like, oh, yeah, it's good. Kind of going back to 9/11,
right.
With the whole...
We're stopping terrorists.
Yeah, we're stopping terrorists. And like, oh, we're listening on phone calls, to the general public. They're like, yeah, you should be doing that, until it gets back to like, oh, well, they're also listening to everybody else, too.
Right.
And they're like, wait. Like, well, you were okay with it before. They're like, well, yeah, well, that was when we...
But that was it. That's when it wasn't me.
Right.
Because I'm not a terrorist.
Right.
Well, I mean, I honestly, like, this is a joke, but like it just hit my head. It's like, I might as well do a podcast.
Because I mean, even like Trump kind of made the joke once that I still remember. He was talking to bunch of police officers, and he's like, hey, whenever you put a suspect into the back of the car and you kind of
Thunk their head.
Yeah, you tell them to make sure they don't bump their head. Like, forget about that. And that's how a lot of people think. They think just like lower criminals, should kind of have that lesser view of life and kind of lesser expectation of.
Right, and we as a society don't owe them anything.
Oh, you fucked up. You deserve a little less.
But then it gets real weird and sideways when all of a sudden it's you.
Right.
And it's wait a minute, no, I was good with it when they were shitty people. I'm not a shitty person.
Yeah.
But I mean, put your head in. I mean, try to put yourself in these other people's places. I mean, fuck, this may be a stretch, but like George Floyd, he may have thought that's the best he could do was pass a bad check or a bad $20 bill. He needed whatever it was he was after. This is what he had in front of him. He didn't need. He might have known he was kind of skirting law or whatever kind of shit like that. But, he's not a bad dude. He's not doing super bad things. Maybe he was. I don't know. I'm just saying right. It's really easy. I'm agreeing with you in the sense that it's really easy to be like, oh, well, they're bad guys. But they're not. Not all of them.
That's kind of had that thought about like Law and Order. How we kind of see little things of them kind of skirting the edge of the law. I think I mentioned it once to Max. I remember there's lots of scenes in Law and Order of them going to the hospital and kind of sweet talking the receptionist to get some information that she's not supposed to be getting out because that violates HIPAA.
Right.
And she's like, I'm going to get up and go to the bathroom, and I'm going to unfortunately leave my computer screen up that says the name of the list of these people and blah, blah, blah.
Right. And
but we think that's okay because that's in the benefit of finding the bad guy.
Right. And what we really need to be thinking about as individuals and as citizens, it's like, what if you're not a bad guy? What if that's not a bad guy? What if you're the other guy on that list? That they have no right to any of that information about you, right? But they're just taking it anyway. And that's the thing. I've made this premise 1,000 times on the show, and I'll do it 1,000 more. It's like, we have for maybe a point of time in a point of time thought that it was the best thing and the right thing to do at the time. We have given over the authority. It's a Franklin code. It's like the man who's willing to give up freedom for security deserves, or will get neither, and deserves, or fuck, what is it? A man who will give up liberty for safety deserves something and will get both, or will get neither. And that's the reality. It's like, we don't think, we as a society currently don't think that way anymore. We don't think, there is no innocent until proven guilty anymore. That's a Kavanaugh thing. If we're going to go back to the Supreme Court shit, there is no, there's no process of law. It's a mob rule. Like, mob rule is one of the issues too. I agree that the Breonna Taylor is the grossest one to me of all the situations we've had currently in the unrest that we're in right now, and all the video footage of cops being bad. Breonna Taylor is the grossest one to me because that is actually a systematic one. That is the system. The system killed her, not a bad cop. None of those cops are bad. Maybe they are, but in the action of what happened, none of those cops were doing wrong. The fact that they were there was wrong, but that's not their fault that they were there. They were doing what they were supposed to be doing in the situation. Right. But that law being in place that they're allowed to do that was what's wrong. Which again is being addressed, but nobody's talking about that part of it. There's multiple people, Rand Paul being one of them, who's trying to write the federal version of killing no-knock warrants, calling it the Breonna Taylor law, and then getting screamed at to say Breonna Taylor as he leaves a Trump rally. But but again, I don't know. I hate to agree with AC, but the rhetoric game is strong. Yeah. And it's so frustrating because it's like once you start actually paying attention, it's so damn obvious. Like, it's so obvious. Like, I was listening, I got a flat. Did you see the truck when you pulled up? Yeah, I got that flat tire that I knew it's been slow leak forever. And
Yeah.
I couldn't. I was just fuck it this morning. I took the Tahoe out, so I was listening to the actual radio. It's the first time I listened to the actual radio in forever. And so I was flipping channels and I was listening to shit. And Mary Jacobs was on. There's some local show. Mary Kane was doing a show, and I was listening to him or whatever. And it's just like, I mean, you know, even him as libertarian as he tries to be or whatever, like it's just it's bits and bytes and catchphrases. I mean, it's just this, that, and the other. And I mean, I still need to get him on the show, Mayor Kane. That if you're listening 2 hours in, you need to call us so we can get you on the show. I've been trying.
I heard he had the same like talking points that are kind of said on both sides on a day-to-day basis.
But I mean, he's got his. I mean, I don't know. You know, again on the Board of Health thing, I tend to agree with him. I think one of the biggest things to me, especially in talking to Kyle and Courtney on Monday, one of the biggest things to me is the Board of Health makes sense in an emergency. That's why it was put into place.
Right.
The Board of Health was put in place because government is supposed to move slow. It's supposed to. It's built to. It's built to move really slow, really small incremental steps. That's the point. Because we don't want a government that swings wildly. We don't want them to just all of a sudden make a decision and then it's a whole different planet tomorrow. That's how that is intentionally built into the process. That's what government is supposed to do, move really slow. But if we're in an emergency, we need something to move quick. And so years ago, don't know which administration it was under, the county built the Board of Health to help in an emergency situation. Because it may, if it's something that needs to have a quick decision, we need to have a body that can make the quick decision. But the problem right now is that we're still under a state of emergency. And apparently that's happening in Nashville right now. There's discussion about lifting the state of emergency. And then the convolutes and the complicated bullshit that is life is that if Governor Lee's in a spot right now where if he lifts the state of emergency to give the authority back to the actual legislative bodies in counties and state to make decisions on how to move forward and everything that's going on, he's throwing money out. Because under a state of emergency, there's federal emergency funding that's available. That as soon as you lift your state of emergency, you no longer have availability of that money. And so he's in a spot where he probably should lift the emergency, but doesn't necessarily want to because he's giving money away. And we're still in a spot. We're still in a weird spot. But
UT lowered some of their restrictions.
Right.
They started allowing
which is fucking crazy.
Sponsored gatherings and limited numbers or whatever.
Which is fucking crazy. Because I would argue to death, and I got no confirmation on it, but this has been a stance of mine for a while. I think UT has a lot of pull with state or with a county and city government. And then they should. They're the biggest company in the in the county and the city.
Employer, yeah.
Right. You know, but I would argue that a lot of the Board of Health stuff that's going on right now, and especially their bar-specific restrictions, which is the main point of contention for most people, because there's a lot of bar and restaurant owners that are really getting fucked by what's going on. I would argue that most of what's going on is the university is leaning on the Board of Health to put bars that cater to their students. That's really what they want, is the university wants the bars that cater to their students because they want to control the pandemic for their students, which is understandable. But the Board of Health can't say, oh, well, these bars in this one place. They have to say for all bars and all restaurants. And so what I feel like is a major part that's happening, which is why I didn't mention this in my letter, but I really feel like the university is putting their weight in, saying, hey, these bars on the Strip are really fucking up our ability to control the pandemic. Do something about it.
There was a letter from whatever the group of fraternities and sororities that were sent to the UT about they were tired of being scapegoated for all the COVID cases.
I mean, realistically,
they feel they've unfairly been blamed for like, oh, it's all in the fraternities and sororities and all their parties that's causing the COVID increase. Because
realistically, this is one thing that again, talking to Courtney and Kyle about it on Monday, and they were just going into it because this whole thing was being introduced and they're not part of the Board of Health. It's like, where's the data? What's the data we're talking about here? I don't understand the data, obviously, but what's the data that the Board of Health is making their decisions off of? Because there's a big...
Now, apparently, UT's cases are going down, and there's a question that if a lot of students have pretty much like just stopped being tested because of, once you're test positive or once you're waiting for that test results to get back, you've got to self-quarantine.
Right.
It's keeping you from going to work, going to classes.
Right. And well, I mean, I was kind of put in that situation this week because Ethan was sick, not feeling good, and was running a fever. And, normally I probably would have sent him to school but they temp check on the way in, and that's a thing. So I was like, I don't want to push it or whatever. And so we kept him home. It's like, well, if we're going to keep him home, we have to take him because we got to get a doctor's note. Because if we have too many absences without excuse, it's a fucking issue. So I was like, okay, well, we've got to do something. And so I take him to the doctor's office, and we're sitting there. And it's like, oh, what's going on? And I tell him what's going on. He's like, do you want to take a COVID test? I was like, do I need to take a COVID test? Not me, but does he need to take one? He's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, I mean, honestly, as far as the school's told me, he's had no contact. There have been cases in the school, but he's had no contact with him because the school hasn't reached out to me specifically and said he may have had contact. Right. Because if he had, he would have already been quarantined, which would have quarantined his brother, which would have quarantined me, which would quarantine the missus. And so I'm sitting there thinking about it. Like, realistically, I'm sitting there listening to him talk, and I'm going, and I called my boss. Like, I called my boss before we went to the appointment. I was like, hey, I'm taking my kid to the doctor. He's not feeling good. He's been running a fever. He's got the sniffles and whatever. And I don't know what the protocol here is. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, as far as it was explained to me when I was talking to the nurse on the phone and setting up the appointment, is it's essentially up to the doctor whether or not he needs to take a COVID test. And if he takes a COVID test, he's assumed positive
until he gets negative.
Right. Which I have direct contact, which means I'm assumed positive, which means I need to get tested.
I don't know if it quite jumps that far.
Do what?
I don't know if it quite jumps that far.
But I don't know. That's part of the problem is I don't know.
Right.
And I was just like, dude, I'm not trying to skate out of work. I'm just trying to keep you abreast of what's going on here. Because in my opinion, if this is so easily transferable, there's no way if my kid has it, I don't. There's no way. I kiss him goodnight every night. He sneezes in my face. He picks my nose. I pick his nose. That's the way we work. Right. There's no way if he has it that I don't. If it's as easily transmittable as they say it is. So I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what the thing is here. But boss, I'm just letting you know that I'm taking the doctor. And if the doctor says he needs to take a COVID test, I would assume that I need to too. Which means I can't work until it comes back. And I don't know how long that takes. And it's a weird spot in my brain when I'm sitting here it's amongst this mess. And I'm sitting here debating when the doctor says, do you want to give him a COVID test? And I'm like, what does that mean? Do I need to? Should I? I don't know. What are you fucking saying to me? Because I have 1,000 things that are going on in my life that makes a difference here. Yes, I would like him to take a test because I would like to know that he doesn't have it because I'd like to send him back to school, and I would like to not be that guy that sends my kid back to school and gets other kids sick. And then maybe one of those kids gets sick and then they pass it to grandma and kill grandma. Right. I would feel fucking terrible about that. But at the same time, I don't want to use up my sick days. And it's not even my sick days. I don't have any sick days. I have no options here. I don't know what happens to me with my employer if I say, hey man, I got to take a couple of days off. That's not how my job works. And as much as I, air quotes, don't need my job, I also don't not want to have it.
Right.
So what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to option? I mean, the doctor put it in my lap and said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, as far as I understand, there have been cases at the school. He's had no contact. I see no reason to test him. And so that's where we are. And I sent him back to school on Thursday.
They test him for strep or anything?
Yeah,
like
he
that?
took his strep and give him 2.
I guess we're getting close to the flu season.
Yeah, strep and flu. Yeah, I gave him both of those. So anyway, I'm just saying, like, it's a weird, and again, my point being, and again, going back to my letter, is that the point is that our Board of Health, statewide, federally, there's so much shit that nobody knows what's going on. And I'm trying to rationalize what's in front of me in the best case for me, my family, as well as my community. Because I actually give a shit about my community. I care if I'm getting other people sick. I don't want to get other people sick. I don't want my kids getting other people sick. I don't want to deal with all that for 1,000 reasons. I don't want to. I just morally, I don't want to be that guy. For the most part, in regular sickness, I don't care. I will send them to school with fucking flu. Who fucking gives a shit? It's the flu. It only kills more people than what this thing does. But anyway,
It's not true.
But
Nice try, but it's not true.
But I'm just saying, like, what's it like? And again, it goes across the board, and all the different topics we talk about is we're so busy fighting over everything that there's no common understanding.
It's true.
And then I have to just kind of operate with what's best in front of me. And if that's the case, that's fine. But then let's all agree that that's the case. And not in a full fatalist sense of it, but fucking take care of yourself, take care of what's around you, and do the best you can. If that's the mentality we're supposed to have, okay, I'm down with it. Let's do it. But we can't do that either, because that's not enough. And that's the other side of the issue to me too. It's like, it's not enough. You're coming up short somewhere. You're excluding somebody. You're putting somebody else in danger. Whatever it is, there's always it doesn't. The two things don't match.
But there's not always a win-win in any situation. You pretty much have to pick the best option.
But even outside of this, I'm just saying, like,
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Outside of this, and
Right.
in general,
right, and that should be. But that should
it's
be
rare to have a win-win situation.
right. But that should be the norm then. But that should be the way we build our lives, and we don't. We're trying to build our lives on we all can win.
We do build our lives. We build our world around trying to help the most amount of people as possible.
Right, but that is not what we do. That's not what we argue politically, I guess, is what I'm getting at. That's not what the politics are trying to argue. The politics are trying to argue that we all can win. The politics are arguing that if you do the right thing, everybody benefits.
No, politics argue that your side's more right than the other side.
Right. If you go with our side, you don't have to deal with the negatives of their side. That's what I'm saying is that we all can win if you play it by our rules.
Right.
But the reality is we all have one simple rule: is do the best you can for you and yours and your immediacy. Which that again, this is my backdoor into libertarianism. That's what it is. It's take care of your fucking self. And once you take care of yourself, then you can take care of your family. And once you take care of yourself and your family, then you can take care of your neighbors. And once you take care of yourself, your family, and your neighbors, then you can start working in your community. Don't go. It shouldn't go the other way. And this is why when we were talking earlier with Jamie, it's like this power grab that the federal government did to figure out a way to make everything, any business is an interstate business, is the other way. That's putting it backwards.
I'd be curious to look at the history behind that. I think that was more probably a look at different money that was changing, because this interstate. I mean, you had less states at that time, only 2 less, I guess, in the late 30s. But I'm saying was it interstate commerce that was in 38?
Yeah,
He was saying, okay.
I mean, Jamie agreed with you. I don't know. Again, like Max said, he could be full of shit, but I don't think he is. But anyway.
Oh, no, I was only repeating what he had said earlier, just because I remembered that he had said 38.
Whatever, you said 38 and it was kick ass. Own it.
Just because I remembered that he had said that.
Shut up, own it, man.
But I think it goes to, as far as like money, probably changing money from state to state, because if you've got, a lot of places do it. We do it with, building a factory on one side of a state or a country border or an international border,
right?
To either save money or
right,
save less in travel.
Well,
and
I mean,
transport.
like you get into,
I think it more went into
you get those
as
stupid
far as
weird
trying to
counties.
regulate interstate commerce.
You get those weird counties that are dry counties, and then right here, Knox County. Knox County, we have no fireworks.
Yeah.
As soon as you leave Knox County in every direction, every major road leaving Knox County, the first thing you do when you leave Knox County is see a fireworks stand.
Yeah.
Every direction. Because it's legal in the state of Tennessee, but Knox County is illegal. Right. And so it's the first thing you do. And so, yeah. No, I get
would
it.
say something like that. I mean, if you leave those decisions up to the states, you've essentially got states fighting over possible tax revenue. One state saying, well, the factory's in, our state. The other one saying, well, the headquarters is in our state, and that's where all the money changes hands, and
right,
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So then nobody wins. So the federal government has to step in and say, okay, we've got to regulate this, interstate
But still,
commerce.
I mean, but at the same time, it's like, okay, like you have You have the max exodus that's happening right now in California, New York. People are getting the fuck out of those states. The reason you're leaving.
It's about that time. I don't know how they afford to live those.
Well, that's what I'm saying
anyway.
though. That people are leaving those places,
Right.
and does California get the right to say, "Oh, well, you left California for Texas, you still have to deal with this, that, or the other"?
Deal with what?
Whatever the fuck you ran away from California for.
Debt, yeah. Debt's gonna follow you.
Okay,
But
yeah,
I
debt
mean,
follows you. If you're in debt to the state of California, sure, but you leave California because the taxes are too high, the services suck, there's too many fucking homeless people, whatever the reason is. Does California be like, oh, well, you moved to California, we're going to ship, for every one person that moves from California to Texas, we're going to ship 10 homeless people there?
What
You're talking
the
about.
fuck are you talking about?
You're talking about the state, people doing stuff across state lines,
Right.
and
But
the
how
federal
much-
government. The
How
federal
do you
government.
equate that to someone leaving, like, you gotta take 10
The
home.
federal government jumps in when a company puts their business right in the state line because they're stealing employees from the next state over.
Okay.
The federal government's jumping in to try to make it equal between the states. Well, why isn't the federal government jumping in and being like, well, no, don't leave California.
I
We'll
wasn't
just
specifically talking about the employees. I was just talking about profits.
right,
essentially.
whatever, but just whatever it is, the tax game, all the different stuff. Like
Right.
California's going to be pissed off because they're losing their top tax bracket. Because the people that can afford to leave are the people that are at the top end of the tax bracket in California. And the reason they're leaving California is because they're on the top end of the tax bracket and they're going to lose 60% of their pay between federal and California taxes. Does California get to pitch a fit because they're leaving? It's the same thing.
I highly doubt it's that, that top 10% of, the wealth of California is looking to leave. Like, those are the people that can afford to stay there. And are already pretty.
But they're the people that can also afford to leave there. The people that are going to get fucked right now are the people that can't afford to leave.
I mean, I dare to say a majority of the people that are leaving, some, have just gotten tired of, some of the liberal policies of California. Just to use California as an example.
Right.
But I think you've got others that, have basically finally said, like, we can't afford to live here. They finally, in my opinion, wised up and were like, hey, we can move somewhere else.
Right.
And for $500,000, find a nice house with some land instead of like a 2-bedroom apartment in San
Right.
Francisco. Or
Right.
whatever.
Or like you're leaving New York City for. We made the show a couple weeks ago. Like this studio that we're in right now would be $500,000 million apartment
Right.
in New York City. But my point being is that's the point of having states is
But
that you
no,
have
I don't-
these
I don't
different
think
issues.
California could enact retribution for people leaving
Right.
and
And
losing a tax base.
Right, but my point is that the federal government steps in on certain places to try to keep it equal across state lines, but they're not going to do it in this sense. Again, I'm not. It's a rough example. I get it, but my point is that that's the benefit of having it's a semi-open market. It's a semi-market system. That's the point of being a federalist system, is that we are a group of states working together on common goal. The common goal being national defense and the ability to do commerce interstate easily. That's the point of that is the federalist system. But the premise being, again, is that each state operates a little bit differently. They have different rules, they have different taxes, they have different this, that, and the other. And the reason you live in one state is because of X, Y, or Z. And the reason you leave one state is because of X, Y, or Z. And so going back to the start of this is that to me the federal government is overstepping. They're trying to make everything interstate as possible because then they get the authority and they get to level the playing field, which we don't want. We want the ability to say we're in Tennessee, not in Kentucky. We play by Tennessee rules, not Kentucky rules. Now we can go to Kentucky and play in Kentucky if we want to, but we get to come back to our rules. And people from Kentucky can come move here if they want to, and they can play in our rules, but they have to come here and play with our rules. Right. And right now, again, Mayor Jacobs on the radio today, because I actually randomly listened to the radio today, was talking about like he thinks Knoxville and Knox County and East Tennessee in general has done fairly well throughout the pandemic, both economically and health wise. Overall, compared to the national issues and stuff like that, and he basically was like, I think we're gonna as we get out of this, we're gonna be way ahead because we're gonna be a landing spot for these people fleeing some of these other places. Because Rogan moved to Texas, Shapiro, who's out of San Francisco, or no, he's out of LA too, and his whole studio and all of the Daily Wire, the podcast group, they're all moving to Nashville. Tennessee is going to land a lot of people out of this exodus that's happening. And so the real question politically is, do we get to stay the way we are? Because that's why you come here. And that's one of the things that's going to be an interesting watch. Because I'm thinking about this for AC. AC's trying to buy a house right now. He's fucked. He's in a really shitty spot. Because the market's terrible right now trying to buy a house.
In a lot of places, yeah.
He can afford it. But, like, part of me is like, just wait. It's going to come down. It's going to relax a little bit. It's getting crazy. It's crazy right now. But at the same time, is if this exodus happens and we start getting a flood of people in from Chicago, New York, people fleeing California, shit like that.
Why do you think Tennessee is going to be a landing spot?
Because we have, if you want to take the list of things that people don't like about a California, Tennessee's the opposite. We have no income tax. We have a relatively low sales tax for having no income tax. We're pro Second Amendment. We're pro.
Yeah, I mean that would tick off a bunch of checks in many Midwestern states as well, that are quote unquote freer to different populations.
Right. Well, but if you want to get into if you get into the culture and stuff like that, especially Nashville, you're going to get any concert you want. That's one thing. I mean, that's one of the things I always say I love about Knoxville. We may not get the concert, but we got a concert within a couple hours.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of a show that I've wanted to see that isn't in Atlanta or Nashville.
Right.
There's no tour that's ever come through that's like, I want to see that band so bad, that doesn't come through one of those two. Or it does come through here. If we had a good fucking venue, they'd come here too, but we have shitty venues.
I'd say, yeah, Asheville still tends to get a little bit better stuff than we do.
Because we have terrible venues.
Well, Elton John's coming.
Is he? I thought that was going to...
I think it's for sometime April of next year. I think
I got my
scheduled for.
I got refunded on my Foo Fighters tickets. Yeah. I was gonna give Thompson a chance. I was gonna go to Thompson and see a show. Bought Foo Fighters tickets for like August. No. May was the original date, and then this shit happened. No. April. Sorry, April was the original date, and then this shit happened, and then it was like, we're coming in November. Okay, went from her birthday to my birthday. Good with it. I'll take it. No, never mind. Here's your money back. Fuck. I really want to go to the show. I don't want my money back. I want to go to the concert. But
that one Jacob's video you posted, apparently he's already having to apologize for parts of it, for being divisive. I didn't think that was going to be divisive. Apologize to anyone that took it that way.
It was pretty obviously divisive.
Yeah. He's like, I really didn't think it was going to be that bad.
I mean,
I was like, really? In the first 15 seconds, you're showing buildings burning and riots.
I think.
I'll go back to rhetoric.
Right, it goes back for sure, but I think it's clear. I mean, the clear part of it is that it's.
I mean, the first thing I asked you, I was like, "What? I don't even know what the point of this video was."
I mean, I watched the whole thing twice, and I was like, I don't know what we're talking about. What are we specifically after here?
Is this promoting something? Is this talking about something?
And
more to come.
And as as the argumentative libertarian here, I don't understand where that sits in the libertarian part of things. I like, and he is a libertarian by definition, at least on his point. It's like, I don't get where any of that gets anywhere, even in the libertarian viewpoint. It's like, I agree with him in the libertarian stance of, risk assessment. Me and you, we're individuals. We can go out and do what we want, and it's up to us. It's our responsibility to assess the risk of whether I should go out to the bar tonight or not. That's my freedom, my right, and it's my responsibility, and I need to deal with the consequences of what happens if I do. That's the libertarian view, but none of that video says any of that. But in a more Republican side of that conversation, I get where it kind of comes from there. In a more conservative view, and it's like, you have non-elected officials doing things. And I guess that's kind of in the libertarian view too, is you got a bureaucracy making decisions. If we're going to have a government, this is a libertarian thing. If we're going to have a government, it needs to be elected. It needs to be elected people doing elected things. It doesn't need to be an employee of the state who is not elected to be there, who just gets hired to do a job. It doesn't need to be up to them to make law. And that's where I kind of land too. I mean, realistically.
Well, I mean, the president does it with his cabinet.
Right, and I think it's a problem.
I mean, it's still, I guess, they're still not vetted, approved by, Senate and Congress.
Right, but I still think it's a problem. It's like, FDA makes a decision. I didn't elect anybody there. And 9 times out of 10, the current president didn't put him there either. Unless it's something that's like weird and specific. It's not, it's a bureaucracy, it's state employees, and they may have their best intentions at heart, but they're state employees. They're not elected. And that's where the main argument to me is. It's like, it's what we were talking about last week, and I couldn't quite land on where AC was and couldn't quite argue specifically against him because he's good at that. It's just like, no, I'm not saying just because they're elected they know better, but I'm saying because they're elected they have the authority. I elected them to give them the authority. Or even if I didn't elect them, but they were elected,
right,
given the authority to make a law that affects my life. And realistically,
would you really be able to palate it that much easier if the shutdown was a decision of the, just the mayor or just the mayor? No, I'm not okay with it being just the mayor. And that's one of the things that I went back and forth with Todd on, is that Todd's assertion, at least, is that this whole thing with the Board of Health is Mayor Jacobs trying to pull this into his office, not a commission thing, just him alone. And I'm not okay with that either. But if the county commission and the mayor put a thing in place and this is what they vote on, I may or may not agree with it, but I can at least acknowledge that it was an elected body. That's different than a group of people who I don't even know who they are. I don't know where they came from. And I see it more of just a pushback and just trying to find a more nuanced of just trying to push back on the pandemic shutdown in general. Just finally like, oh, well, I hate it because, it was an unelected official that's making all these decisions for me. I think people would be just as pissed off regardless.
I agree, but at least the pissed off people, they have an authority to do something about it in the future. The greatest thing that I've heard recently, and I don't remember who said it, and it's probably not a new idea. It's certainly not a new idea. You get the government you deserve. You get the government you deserve. That's all it is.
Is that why we have such a shitty government?
Yeah, we deserve this because we don't fucking care. It's real. I mean, that's the best way to put it, is that we don't care. We don't put forth the effort. We don't pay attention.
Right.
We don't know what their fucking job is. And when they tell us they're going to help the president build a wall, even though their job has nothing to fucking do with it, we say, oh, I want a wall too. And so we vote for that person, even though it has nothing to do with their fucking job. We fall into the rhetoric. We believe the rhetoric and don't pay attention to say, and again, I've been actively angry about us as voters, sucking as voters, but I put that on the media too. The media is not doing their job either, because they're letting these people spew their rhetoric and not correcting them. They're not saying, hey, that's not your job. You can talk about the schools all you want, but that's not your job. And they'll turn around and they'll release the article and they'll talk about how whoever wants to do all they can for the schools, instead of going in there like, hey, this person has nothing to do with the fucking schools. And if they're going to run on school board issue, or if they're going to run on school issues, then they need to run for school board. They don't need to run for county commission. Is that how it works? And the media doesn't bother with that. And maybe, and again, on a business standpoint, maybe that is the right decision as a media business to not correct it, because nobody fucking cares. It's not going to sell you. It's not going to sell you any advertisement by doing it by correctly informing the public. Maybe that's the problem, but I don't know how to fix that, other than just to sit here and bitch about it and hope that 12 people, 50 7, whatever it is. Hope that a couple of these people will get through, and then we can get somewhere. There's value here, and I know there's value here. So, I was gonna be asleep like 2 hours ago. I should have. I was on the fence on canceling the night. I'm so fucking tired. My kid got me sick. Damn it! I got the COVID. I forgot what episode it is. I'm tired.
It's that one after the last one.
Yeah, it's the one you're listening to now. Oh, guys. Oh, it's been a week. It's been a hell of a week. We got Virginia Couch coming Monday. I'm excited to talk to her again, especially now that we know who she's actually running against. She has a real straightforward competitor. I'll be curious to ask her if there's any desire to fuck around with the legalities of that situation. Because there is kind of weird legal stand for whether she can argue that he's not even supposed to be there. Like she on the other side of the ticket can legally argue about it. Anyway, Virginia Couch is coming in. We're almost agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Hit us up, ask us what you want to know. If we're not on a podcast provider that you like, let me know what podcast provider that is, and we'll figure out how to get on there. That's all I got. I'm tired. It's been a fun show. We'll be back on Monday with Virginia Couch, and I'll let you know how my interview with the county commission goes on whether or not I get to be on the Board of Health. That'll be fun. So, thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good night.